様は本堂におられます。
He was a worthless swordsman that had absolutely no merits to his name until his dying breath. When he thought he would wake up in the afterlife, however, he found himself within a new world surrounded by dudes. With so many dudes around him, he drinks his sorrows away day after day, until he finally is forced to show his true powers. Episode 1. Amidst a battle is a young whippersnapper named Ranmaru, who despite his young age is recognized by his companions. While his clan gets burned to the ground, others watch idly as a sword becomes encased in flames, revealing a hidden power. It is then revealed this is all a dream when a blue-haired man asks the other guy if he had that bad dream again. While they sit around doing jack, a few other shady-looking figures fight against a group of skeletons. One of these people fighting the skeletons is a black-haired boy who looks like a weakling. If you assume this, however, you would be wrong, for he is an absolute demon with a sword. He doesn't even need to lift a hand because he trusts his friends that much. Finally, after he gets tired of sitting around, watching the others get defeated, he decides to step up and emerge into battle. Meanwhile, a pretty blonde boy struggles against one of these skeletons, causing him to be saved by some bulky man. He calls the boy worthless, asking why he is even in battle if he can't defeat a single skeleton. While he talks, the black-haired boy emerges again, telling them to stop slacking off. After they clean things up here, they go back to their home to wash up together, with each of them doing the same morning routine. It seems as if they are robots or something. They then all go to greet another handsome black-haired man, making me lose track of who is even important or not. With 30 people who look like main characters, they all act like the protagonist, doing their own things. During this, the protagonist finally emerges, being welcomed by another generic-looking character. He tells them he will vow his allegiance to them, hoping to make a name for himself in this world of swords. On the other hand, the pink-haired man who had the bad dream talks with his ally about this dream, wondering if it will one day come true. His friend asks him if he has any emotions surrounding the dream, wondering if it is hurting him at all. The pink-haired man tells him he doesn't really care about it at all, so Yagen, the nerdy-looking guy, offers him some Xanax to sleep better. He accepts, but is soon interrupted when some whippersnappers come looking for the main character. They ask where he is, hoping to make friends with the newcomer, but are left with no information. While this occurs, some other characters engage in battle, including the blonde guy. He struggles in battle at first, but eventually senses where his opponent is striking from, launching his sword out of his hand. Although he got this advantage, his sword was knocked out as well, causing the duel to be a draw. They then ask the referee if he learned anything until the pink-haired man, Souza, emerges. They ask him if he wants to fight alongside them, but he refuses, hoping to just mope around all day. He tells the group that he is feeling lazy today, so he plans on just sitting around. While they talk, another character emerges, completely wasted, lowering the tension. The blonde guy tries to stop him from sitting on the mat, but soon realizes this is the newcomer. Before we continue, let's take a moment to answer the question of the day. What is your favorite sword fight in all of anime? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out in the next video. Now, back to the recap. Acting like a drunken fool, the newcomer introduces himself as Fudu, an alcoholic. They ask him where he got the drink from, to which he explains he stole it. This stuns them, wondering how he can be so laid back after entering a new world. Fudu then walks up on Souza, asking him if he has met him before. He tells him he feels like he has fought against him before, asking if he wants to clash swords again. Souza denies his request, but Fudu eventually reveals his intentions, claiming to be loved by someone named Lord Nobunaga like he is. As they talk, another sexy dude walks up on them, asking Fudu why he has been drinking. Fudu explains that he was catching up with an old friend, claiming that he knows Souza from his past life. He then asks if there are any other people loved by the Nobunaga sword, revealing there is. He asks to see them, but he has stopped when he is told to follow Souza around the area. With Souza being announced as his guard, the blonde guy decides to join alongside them, introducing himself as Yaman Bagiri. Once Fudu hears this, he makes fun of him, asking why his name sounds so stupid. After he says this, Souza stops him from teasing Yaman Bagiri any further, telling him to follow him. They then begin walking through the estate, where Yaman Bagiri informs Fudu of what is going on in this world. With it being 2205 AD, there are tons of monsters wandering the world, causing people like himself to fight them. As they walk around the estate, Fudo asks who all these random people are, to which he learns they are also people summoned into this world like himself. With every person doing their own slave work, everything gets done around the estate. Fudo realizes that in this world he has a much stronger body than usual, seeing the various people doing jobs without break. With there being everything you could imagine to do, there are even games to waste the day away. Fudo this and tries to join, but is guided elsewhere, eventually finding some bum lying on a roof. He tells them that although he is a useless sword, he will still try his hardest. Fudo shares his past, informing them his past master gave him his love, but he couldn't repay it. While they talk, more random people emerge, causing Fudo to make a ruckus introducing himself. One of these men in the group happens to also be from this Nobunaga family, so Fudo tries to talk with him. After asking how he is doing, the guy walks away, completely ignoring Fudo. As the day goes on, people eventually finish up their duties for the day. Souza in particular sits around, talking with the nerdy guy about what power Fudo could have. With Nobunaga being one of the strongest swords masters in all of history, they wonder why Fudo would claim to be useless in battle. As they talk, Souza reveals that he ended up dying in battle alongside Nobunaga until he was tattooed by the Demon King. He shares that because of this, he feels like a caged bird, unable to ever use his real power. Meanwhile, Yamanbagiri is seen sitting alone in a room, wondering what kind of power Fudo holds. As he meditates, he is interrupted by another random person telling him the master is expecting him. He then follows him and meets with the master, revealing this so-called master is just a small doll, with the man beside it doing all the talking. He tells Yamanbagiri that the master has a big job with him. He orders Yamanbagiri to go fight in their stead, hoping to expand their influence. Yamanbagiri tries to reject the request, claiming he is useless, but the man beside the master knows better. He tells Yamanbagiri he isn't some useless character and that he needs to face his fears. Finally, the master speaks, telling Yamanbagiri he needs to obey his orders even if he considers himself weak. Episode 2. The next morning, Fudo gets straight to work, heading to the fields to farm some crops. As he farms, Souza watches over him, wondering how he can be so high-spirited. He then heads into where they cook these ingredients, revealing Fudo has never cooked before. While he cooks in the kitchen, Yamanbagiri and some others decide to train out in an open field. That is until he is approached by a man named Hasebe, telling him the master is calling for him. He tells him that he is going to become an attendant, whatever that is, but Yamanbagiri shows discomfort. He asks him if he is really able to become one, thinking he is too weak to be an attendant. The others alongside him encourage him, telling Yamanbagiri if anyone's got what it takes them, he does. Now, with this out of the way, the blue-haired man invites Hasebe to join him in his training, leaving Yamanbagiri alone. Meanwhile, Fudo eats the food he cooked up, commenting that it is good despite it being made by his own hands. Later that night, we transition to see the bum from earlier being approached by a white-haired man. He asks the bum what he is doing in his spot, showing he comes here often. He tells the bum that he is surprised to see him here, but as he starts talking, the bum decides to leave. Souza, on the other hand, has that same dream, watching as his old estate gets burned before his eyes. This time, rather than just seeing the dream, he experiences it firsthand, forcing him to wake up in a panic. The following day, he goes to eat, but still feels strange from that dream last night. Others notice this and ask if he is all right, but he continues to not tell us anything. Eventually, the nerd guy walks up and asks Souza if he needs help with anything. His emergence is followed by another new character, asking if he can help. He tells Souza that although he is having a bad dream, he now has the chance to make a new life, hopefully for the better. As they talk, some filthy rascal cat walks up on them, interrupting their conversation. Another person walks up on them as well, calling the blue-haired man to get ready for the mission. While all this happens, Fudo watches from the sideline, drinking in the process. He learns of the mission they are going on, and offers to lend his help. Yamanbagiri stops him, however, telling him this isn't some child's play. He informs him that they fight against the strongest of monsters in the world, using their swords to defeat them. For some reason, one of them has a gun, but that's besides the point. He continues explaining, showing every one of the random characters have their own skill set. With them having the duty to defend history, he says this job is much too large for the likes of him just yet. Fudo then goes and sits around depressed for the night until the estate's baddie walks up on him, introducing herself as Midar. She asks if he is sad for getting scolded by Yamanbagiri, showing she has ears in all places. While he mopes around in a depressed mood, the others arrive at the battlefield, ready to save history. With their enemy being the same generic skeleton monsters in every sight, they set their sights on one day finally ridding the world of chaos. Two of the swordsmen talk amongst each other until one of them shows his fear, trying to back out of the fight. During this, the others start their own battles, each hoping to make a name for themselves. After some time, they all finish up their battles, hoping nobody gets hurt. To their surprise, however, the smallest of the group gets fatally wounded, forcing them to put a halt to their battle. They head back to put the small child, Sayo, in the infirmary, hoping he will recover hastily. While Sayo lays idly in bed, the light blue-haired man finally explains what ended up happening. He tells us that when he was walking around the castle, he ended up getting distracted, forcing Sayo to step in and save him. As a result of this, Sayo ended up getting injured, making him feel as if it was his fault. He tries to put the blame on himself, but the others stop him, informing him it's all of their faults for exposing Sayo to battle. Later that night, while watching over Sayo, Souza overhears him begging for revenge. This pains the light blue-haired man, so he pats the worthless kid on the head, hoping he will soon get better. He then explains why Sayo is asking for revenge, telling Souza in his past life he was killed. This pains Souza's heart, so he tells his friend that he will try his best for him, despite him being completely useless thus far. The following day, some of the leaders of the group decide to talk together about important matters, but it's hard when some of them are drinking. Yaman Bagiri asks them to be serious while wearing his white hood, acting all suspicious. Finally, they start talking about their future plans, acting like soon the monsters will break free and attack them directly. With nobody able to decide on a plan, they eventually move on to asking Yaman Bagiri what he wants to do. He tells them that they should send various teams to investigate the area first, but as he talks, he is interrupted. Another character walks in, presenting food to the group, getting them off task yet again. They compliment his cooking, ignoring Yaman Bagiri's plan to find a solution. With Hasebe protesting their antics, he tries to get everybody to get back on topic. Before he does, however, he goes to the door and reveals that Fudu has been hiding behind it this whole time. Still with the drink in his hand, he begins expressing his drunken feelings to the group, begging them to let him fight with them. He tells them he has no clue what's going on, making it one of the only relatable things we have with him. He begins yapping about his past, telling them because he failed his past master he wants to try his hardest in this life. Once they hear this, Hasebe decides to test his strengths to see if he truly is capable of helping them. Once he says this, he leaves the room, causing Fudu to become enraged for some reason. He spends the rest of his night as usual, drinking until Yaman Bagiri walks up on him. He asks him to take this task seriously, still wearing his hood for some reason. Fudu then asks him to explain what's going on, but before he can, the main guy, Mikazuki, emerges, telling Fudu he will spill it out to him. He tells him their master called upon them to save history, causing Fudu to ask what if he doesn't follow them. Mikazuki then whips out his sword and shows he doesn't have a choice in the matter, ordering him to live his life for his new master. He tells him although he will be cut down if he retaliates, he has no intentions to do so unless he truly disobeys their master. Episode 3. Following these events, they set out to hopefully subdue the monsters that are within the world. As they go along their adventure, they make sure to take breaks to enjoy the new life that their master has given them. Later that week, Hasebe and Souza engage in a duel to see as their skills have gotten any worse over time. With both sides having their own strengths and being strong in their own regard, it's hard to see who will win. The others tells Hasebe to calm down, reminding him it's only a friendly duel. He lets his emotions take control of him, however, drawing his sword at Souza again. He reveals that because Fodo didn't acknowledge him as a fellow companion, he has a lot of pent-up anger. He tries to take this out on Souza, but ultimately realizes he is stepping out of line, so he leaves. After this happens, he goes to regain his thoughts, remembering the time when he was alongside Nobunaga. With him originally being presented as one of the strongest swords within their land, he was regarded as one of the strongest. That was until the fated day when he ended up losing his master by neglecting his duties. The next morning, Fudu starts back up again in his drinking, speaking blasphemy to the others. He shares his drunken thoughts to the others, informing them of all of his feats in his past life. He talks about how he would help Nobunaga in his life to the others, hoping to gain some merit. They tell him to stop flexing, causing him to become a bit saddened. Hasebe then approaches, asking what they are talking about. Before anyone can speak, Fudu says hello to him, but this only angers him. He asks Fudu if he is morning drinking again, calling him a scumbag in the process. With Fudo being tipsy, he doesn't care about these insults, showing he is mature even when drinking. Hasebe tells him that he needs to forget about his past master, his new master being the only one important. Fudo counters this by claiming Nobunaga is still his master, even if he serves a new one. This causes Hasebe to call Nobunaga a weakling, blaming his death on his own weaknesses. As a result of this, Fudo grabs his collar, claiming he should never insult his previous master. He tells the others that Nobunaga showed him love when he was alive, claiming he must have been nice to him as well. Even with his claims, Hasebe denies it, causing the two to go back and forth arguing. While they argue, Suzuha begins to feel uneasy, eventually being brought to tears from the thought of his past master. He wonders why he has such an attachment to Nobunaga, hiding his true feelings from the others. Yamanbagiri then emerges still in his strange getup, asking the others what is going on. Before he gets an answer, everyone disperse, leaving him in his own thoughts. Fudo goes to talk with him, asking why he is so emotional about Nobunaga. The light blue-haired man, Kusetsu, then enters and tells Suza that he should rely on others from time to time. He asks him if he can help him with his task, recognizing his pale eyes. Hasebe, on the other hand, goes to meet with the nerdy guy to talk about his past. He tells him that Nobunaga treated him well, but ended up selling him off and neglecting him. He reveals that he feels abandoned by Nobunaga and feels like he is haunting him even in his grave. Others talk about the situation but are still unsure of how Nobunaga truly acted during his life. Although he is regarded as one of the strongest and most influential people in history, his personality is still hidden. One thing is sure, one of his strongest swords was in possession of Hasebe at one time, making them wonder why he is so angry at him. With everyone having their own thoughts about the matter, they are ultimately unable to do anything, not knowing how to help either side. Later that day, Suza is seen sweeping up one of the barns until he is given advice by Kosetsu. He tells him they should go for a ride to talk everything out, hoping to mediate the tension. While this happens, some of the others decide to train their muscles, knowing they must always be ready for battle. With each one trying to outdo the other, it leads to a competition amongst the swordsmen. Yamanbagiri, on the other hand, leisurely does his training, still in his stupid hood. His friend asks him why he always wears the hood, but he refuses to explain himself. He instead diverts the conversation to gossip about Fudo and Hasebe. With both of them originally being Nobunaga's sword, he blames himself for getting them off on the wrong footing. They tell him that he shouldn't feel bad about it all, reminding him he has nothing to do with it. Yamanbagiri then tells them that if they don't get along with them, he fears they will go down the same path in the past. Previously, Yamanbagiri had led a squadron but ended up losing half of his companions because of internal disputes within the battle. He blamed his friends' deaths on himself, being unable to accept his own defeat. Although he was a crybaby during this battle, he ended up making it out alive, having to bear with the pain of losing his companions. He tells them he resigned as an attendant before because he felt it was his fault they died. Although he is all mopey, his friends still urge him to continue forward, claiming he is stronger than any of them. As they talk, more people begin to pop up, all reminding Yamanbagiri of his feats. This cheers him up a bit, finally deciding to accept his title as one of the master's attendants. Mikazuki then emerges, telling Yamanbagiri that the master's decision is always right, urging him to get over his pent-up feelings. As he talks, more and more people begin to pop up, making it seem like a small get-together. While this occurs, Suza has his ride alongside Kusetsu, feeling a bit better from it. He thanks Kusetsu for taking him on this, allowing him to remember how beautiful this world is. Following this, everyone begins to gather within the dojo, waiting to hear an announcement. Yamanbagiri then walks up to the stage and tells the others that he is done being a crybaby, finally accepting his title as an attendant. As his first order, he tells everyone they will have a small training session. They then all head into a forest, and instead of a friendly sparring match, they fight against each other with real swords, hoping to hone their skills. Episode 4. With Yamanbagiri dividing them into 4 teams, each engaging against their own opponent, he hopes some real combat experience will hone their skills. He explains that by doing this training, they will have something to look for, finally knowing who is the strongest amongst them. He explains that Team 1 includes people like Suza and Hasebe along with Fudo. In Team 2, there is Mikazuki, Sayo, and some other randoms. Team 3 consists fully of randoms, except for Yamabushi, the strongest of the swordsmen in terms of raw strength. Team 4 has only randoms in it, making them seem like the weakest of the group. After hearing all of this, Hasebe protests, claiming there is no way he can fight alongside the others. Mixauki then asks if he plans on going against the master's orders, the teams being decided by him. Upon hearing this, Hasebe backs down, still refusing to accept Fudo. Some of the others talk later that night, wondering how Yamanbagiri managed to become an attendant again. The following morning, the training session finally begins, causing all of the lower-level swordsmen to watch idly. With a couple of randoms as the commentators, the audience wonders if they are worthy of being the announcers. They wonder who to root for, wishing the best for everyone contending. A fox then emerges and puts up a screen of the teams, showing they have technology like television in this world. While this occurs, Yamanbagiri explains the rules to the others, hoping to have a fair match between them all. Finally, without further ado, the competition begins, causing the teams to start warming up. Meanwhile, Hasebe is still mad at Fudo, telling him not to hold him back. Someone then sounds a horn, initiating the battle, causing Yamanbagiri to tell Hasebe and Fudo to stop arguing. As the first battle, we have two young-looking randoms, both displaying amazing sword skills. With the forest having tons of cover, this challenge ends up being a competition of speed. While they fight, some others fight, showing they are pumped up for this event. Each side discusses their plans before engaging in battle until the battle begins. The commentators tell the audience with each of them having their own advantages. It's too early to know who will win. While they battle, the bum, who is always lying around on the roof, gets engaged by a feminine-looking man. He is pushed back, showing that he shouldn't neglect his training. He realizes if he does bad, he will have harsher training, so he begins going all out, hoping to show them his strength. On the battlefield, more fights begin to arise with tons of people, hoping to prove their strengths. One of the fights includes a man who somehow has a gun. He tries to shoot his opponent, but it shows that even guns aren't fast enough to deal any damage. In another part of the forest, two pink-haired men engage in battle, stunning the audience. Then suddenly the cameras begin to shut off, making the audience wonder what's going on. Yamanbagiri, on the other hand, runs around until he eventually stumbles upon Mikazuki. He thinks they will be on friendly terms, but Mikazuki strikes him, showing he has no intent of sitting idly. Sayo, on the other hand, fights against his own opponent, him being unsure if he can fight his friend. He tells him that he will only fight for revenge, causing the white-haired man to antagonize him. This angers him, so he rushes into battle, but is quickly pushed back. This forces his companion to enter the battle, making it a 2v2. On another side of the forest, Hasebe encounters Souza, but they don't engage in battle, with both sides being on the same team. Like usual, Souza begins talking about Nobunaga, but thankfully they are interrupted. Souza begins his battle, causing Hasebe to try and interrupt it. Before he can, however, another emerges, stopping him and making it a 2v2. Two others notice this, so they join in on the fight, deciding to make it an uneven 4v2. Hasebe doesn't falter, however, proving even against two he can hold his own. After some sparring, they eventually stop fighting and start complementing each other's skills. Yamanbagiri, on the other hand, is still in battle against Mikazuki, him not being able to land a single blow. As they fight, the two pink-haired men emerge, telling Yamanbagiri they plan on teaming up against him. They invite Mikazuki to join their team as well, but he decides to team up with Yamanbagiri. With this being a free-for-all, any rules go, meaning even enemies can team up. While this occurs, Hasebe continues fighting until his battle is interrupted by the drunk Fudo. He tells them that he plans on fighting as well, hoping to prove Nobunaga was the greatest fighter. Once he says this, Hasebe gets angry, so he grabs his collar and starts arguing again. He tells Fudo to forget about Nobunaga again, showing he has no plans on compromising his thoughts. This eventually leads to the two pushing each other back until Souza faints for some reason. Because of this, they stop the training, revealing it was a failure. This makes Yamanbagiri feel like a failure, so he walks away from the others, hoping to cry off his emotions. He decides to head to a pond within the estate to cry, but is stopped when Mikazuki approaches him with a drink. He tells him to drink his sorrows away with hopes that he will one day take off his stupid hood. This drink opens Yamanbagiri's emotions up, him explaining that he feels bad about the training. He wishes to just help the others, but is unable to do even that. Mikazuki then tells him to relax, urging him to look up at the moon. He tells him that the moon is beautiful, just like his emotions, informing him that he needs to get control of himself. He tells him that if the moon were to ever become a sword, then it would be the most beautiful thing in the world. This makes Yamanbagiri feel more relaxed, so he relies on Mikazuki, asking him how he can become a better attendant. Mikazuki tells him that success lies in following the master's orders, informing him nothing else matters. The following day, he heads back to the dojo and decides he will prove his strength to the master rather than try stupid training. He tells him he will go and put the end to an ongoing battle, hoping some of the others will accompany him. He then calls for Fudo and some others, explaining that they will go to a temple to deal with the monsters. Episode 5. Walking around aimlessly is a young man named Ranmaru, a young samurai. He gets interrupted by an older feller, asking what he is doing slacking off. He tells him that he isn't slacking off, but rather presenting a sword to his lord. Upon inspecting it, the man who confronted him gets filled with impure thoughts, wondering if he should steal the sword. He ends up holding himself back, but shows that he isn't one to mess around with. He tells Ranmaru that the sword he is transporting is worth a nation, urging him to take care of it. This makes him feel like a weakling, telling the others that the Lord trusted him with this sword. The man then informs him that he needs to be more cautious regardless, informing him it's likely to be stolen if not hidden away. He pays this no mind, but little does he know there are monsters close by, ready to snatch the sword at a moment's notice. Back in the present, we see Yaman Bagiri, alongside Mikazuki, discussing his plans to change history. It is revealed they are back in the past before Nobunaga died, specifically one day before he died. There are various theories of how he died, but one thing is for sure, he died during the tea party they are planning on raiding. Hasebi, on the other hand, stands on top of a roof waiting to strike. He believes that it will be an easy job, showing he is overconfident in his skills. Meanwhile, while everyone else is acting cautiously, Fudo walks around town alongside Souza, showing no interest in his mission. He asks Souza what his deal with Nobunaga is, still not understanding why he gets so emotional about it. He then asks if he feels nostalgic being in this area, both of them previously being under Nobunaga's steed. Eventually, he asks him if he can go to meet with Nobunaga to see if he can talk to him one last time. Souza, however, has no intentions of doing so, reminding him they are currently on a mission. He tells Fudo to focus on their mission, but as he says this, Fudo is seen rushing off. While this happens, the others stand around waiting for them to meet back up, wondering why it is taking them so long. Yaman Bagiri decides to change their plans with his companions nowhere to be seen. While they argue together, Souza finally catches up to Fudo, informing him this is no time to play around. Fudo tries to tell him that he just wanted to get a peek at him to see his master one last time. Souza then reminds him of their task, telling him they are here to fix the past. This makes Fudo angry, telling him he was lucky to see Nobunaga to his dying breath. He tells him he wasn't there when Nobunaga died, so he just wants to see him again. Souza then informs him that although he was there, he was in no position to help him. He tells Fudo that he felt like a captured bird, being used for whatever plans Nobunaga intended. Fudo tries to assure him that Nobunaga loved him, even if he felt trapped, giving him one of the strongest swords in history. While he talks, some monsters emerge behind them, forcing Souza to draw his sword. Fudo follows suit and begins fighting, but he gets knocked back instantly. As he sits on the ground, Hasebe emerges and takes pity on Fudo, telling him to watch and learn. He then begins cutting down the monsters and the others join him, making the fight shift. Fudo, on the contrary, gets angry for having to be defended too. He rushes off closer to Nobunaga's estate until he is stopped yet again by some monsters. They push him back and he eventually is forced to be saved by Yagen. With him being saved once again by a companion, he wonders if he should really be here. As time goes, Ranmaru eventually emerges with his famed sword in hand. He faces off against HTE monsters, showing he has no intentions of backing down. After showing his strength, the monsters run off and the others arrive just in time to miss the entire fight. Fudo, on the other hand, seems to know this man from his previous life. He hugs Ranmaru and tells him he has missed him. Ranmaru, not knowing who he is, he tells him that he used to serve under him, but before he can explain himself, Yagen interrupts him. He takes him elsewhere, making sure that he isn't able to talk with him. Ranmaru then notices one of the swordsman's injuries, so he offers some help. He asks him if he can treat his wound, informing him he has all of the facilities to tend to him. With Ranmaru insisting on helping, he is forced to comply, leading them within his manor. Yaman Bagiri, on the other hand, walks around still looking for the others, unknowing to what's been going down. As he speaks, he suddenly notices a man named Yasuke walking around, calling him one of Nobunaga's retainers. He reveals that during his first mission where he lost some companions, the one behind the attacks was Yasuke. With this in mind, they consider him for being responsible for Nobunaga's death, but as they talk, he approaches them. He asks Yaman Bagiri why he is glaring at him with such a stupid hood on, but he is unable to answer. He holds his anger within and lets Mikazuki do the talking for him. This clears up the misunderstanding and he walks away, leaving the two to continue their search. Meanwhile, within Ranmaru's estate, he is seen treating all of the wounds Fudo's party may have. Ranmaru then tells them that if they ever need anything, just to call out to him, informing them he would never leave someone hurt. As he continues to explain himself, Fudo gets reminded of his past, previously being under Ranmaru. He shares with the others that another reason he helped them was because of nostalgia. He tells them he felt as if he had met them before, reminding him of one of his fellow swordsmen. He explains that it was because of his love for the Lord, even though Hasabi hasn't said anything in regard to Nobunaga. Fudo then tries to talk with him some more, but is stopped once again by the others. He's forced to just say his thanks to him, leaving without getting to really talk it out with him. Before they leave, however, Suza asks him a question, wondering how he feels about Nobunaga. As usual, before we get any answers, someone pulls them away, leaving Ranmaru to wonder who these people truly are. Later that night, they walk around, hoping to meet back up with the others, but are unsure where they even are. One thing is clear, however. They think that Ranmaru is a vital part in Nobunaga's death. After some looking around, Yamanbagiri eventually finds the others, causing Fudo to express himself, apologizes for running off, and calls himself useless, having got beat around by all the monsters. Yamanbagiri tells him that he also feels like a useless sword, telling him of his past. He tells him that he was originally a top retainer to his master, but never fulfilled his purpose in life. He calls himself a fake, telling Fudo that he will make up for his past life's uselessness. As this happens, Ranmaru gets approached by some monsters, hoping to take his sword away. With too many monsters before him, he ends up getting taken over and becomes one with them.